Hi, good morning or good afternoon over in the UK. This is Helena. Did I say it right? Helena
Helena.
Coleman. I'm sorry, Helena Coleman. She's the trainee clinical psychologist. She's joining us all the way from the UK, and you were nice enough to reach out to offer to share some of your experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what drew you into working with hospice? And thank you for joining us.
Um, so, yeah, as you just said, I'm training to be a clinical psychologist. So I finish in August. As part of my training, I had to do a health placement. So that meant working in any sort of healthcare setting. Um, I didn't get a choice about what healthcare setting that would be. And I had an email to inform me that I was going to be placed in a hospice, which was quite a shock to me, to be honest. I felt really scared. I didn't really have anybody to talk to about it. And I suppose I wasn't expecting to be placed in that sort of setting during training. I thought that you should choose to work in a hospice rather than be told to work in one as part of your training, because it can be quite an emotive setting for people. And I suppose for me, I didn't think it would suit me. If you'd have asked me a couple of years ago if I'd have ever chosen to go into a hospice and work with people about death and dying and their experiences of that, I wouldn't have said it was something that I would do.
Which one? What were you looking for? What were you really having your fingers crossed for? What were you hoping for? Who were you looking to work with, kids or?
Mm, I I really didn't mind. I was thinking it would be something like working with people with diabetes or working with people with chronic pain. So I thought it would be more those sorts of settings.
Right. So you got in there. You were assigned to working with hospice people, and then um, how did that go?
So before I started, I was feeling really worried about going in. I was kind of dreading going into work. It brought up some personal experiences for me about family members who had died, and that was playing on my mind a lot more than it had previously. So I was getting all of these sorts of difficult feelings or negative feelings associated with working in a hospice before I'd even stepped through the door. But after about 2 weeks of working there, it completely flipped on its head. I absolutely loved it. My partner, my friends, my family couldn't believe how much I'd changed my view on hospices and about me working in them. So what I liked about it was it felt as though all of the staff and volunteers that worked there just put their arms around people. They supported them really holistically. And family members weren't forgotten either. So the people that were watching their loved one dying were also included in the care. And I really liked that approach, rather than just focusing on the patient, although that is obviously important as well.
Right.
I was lucky enough to be there over a Christmas period as well, which was really special. So I witnessed staff going above and beyond to make patients' Christmases extra special. And there were loads of events going on that I got involved in. And it just felt like a really valuable experience for me, both personally and professionally. I felt as though I would be happy for a family member to be in a hospice, and I'd also be happy if at the end of my life I was in a hospice, because I'd witnessed this amazing care that people were receiving. And I guess I just felt honoured and humbled to have been given this opportunity, really.
No, that's an awesome perspective. And I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, what you got to think about, what would you want? Not everyone has the opportunity to pick that, you know. So sometimes people are gone suddenly and don't get the opportunity to say goodbye. So that's really amazing perspective. How long did you work? How long did you get to work with hospice?
So I was there for 6 months
Oh, wow.
on a placement. Yeah. And then I chose to do some research in hospices in the UK. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to keep that connection with hospices because I'd enjoyed it so much. And I wanted to contribute to the area. And I thought by choosing to do my thesis, my research in that area, I could continue to contribute to that field, even if it was from afar.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that your thesis was on the impact of volunteering in hospice. Um, how did you go about doing that study, and what did you find?
I recruited volunteers from a few different hospices and interviewed them about their experience of being a volunteer and the impact that had on their emotional well-being.
Mm-hmm.
It was really powerful to do those interviews with people, and I really valued those conversations and the time that they took to talk to me about their experiences. I found that connection was really important to people. So that connection with patients and staff, and that helped people to manage challenging experiences, which there were varied opinions on how difficult experiences were managed and what would be helpful for people, which I suppose is just reflected in everyday life. We all have different opinions about what would be helpful for us.
Right.
And I suppose I wanted to consider how clinical psychology could contribute to supporting volunteers, whether that was through consultation with the hospice in general, or actually providing direct support to the volunteers, or supervision, things like that.
Yeah. So as a clinical psychologist working with a hospice, would you work with the employees, to support them? Would it be with the families? Would it be with the patients themselves? All of the above?
Yeah, pretty much everything you just said. So I was doing a lot of one-to-one work with patients and their family at the time that I was there. My supervisor, a clinical psychologist who had worked at this hospice for 10 years, he did a lot of work with the staff as well, offering reflective spaces for them to think about the impact of their role, to discuss any challenges with specific patients or families, or just challenges of the role in general. And I think that's really important, that we offer that support to staff in hospices, but also not forget those volunteers, because the volunteers spend as much time, if not more time, with patients, and sometimes they can have really emotive conversations with them. And it might be the volunteer that the patient opens up to about things that they're scared of, or maybe things that they're not happy with their care. So I feel as though we need to support those volunteers in managing those experiences as well.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. And you really do grow like a real relationship with the people you work with. That's one of the things I miss. I had mentioned, before our interview, that I had worked in social work, prior to working in hospice, and it was in long-term care, and you just develop a lot of genuine relationships with the patients. And it's hard on the staff too when someone passes away, and that wasn't, in a hospice facility. So, you had a long-term relationship, sometimes, working with the same patients for years. So it is really important to support the staff. I agree. And now you're looking to, once you graduate in August, you're looking to work in hospice full time, correct?
Yes, I mean, I would absolutely love to. We've got some great hospices in the area, and they're doing some brilliant work. So I think there'll be some great developments within hospices. And it'll be interesting to see the impact of this pandemic, and to see if there are any changes from that as well.
Right, right. How is that affecting you, working with hospice?
So it didn't affect my research, because I'd completed the interviews before that. I was thinking whether if I'd conducted the interviews during the pandemic or after the pandemic, whether there would have been different results. Because I mean, I know for volunteers especially, that role can really bring a lot to their lives as well. It does tend to be older people that volunteer, so they can sometimes feel that sense of community, and that the hospice is part of their family, really.
Right.
And at the moment, that's been taken away from some people because of the pandemic. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens after this.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely going to be really of value. I think you're really going to be needed, because there's going to be a lot of lack of closure. At least over here in the U.S., we're seeing people pass away and they're not able to visit. Like, families aren't able to visit as much as they normally would. If someone's in an inpatient unit or at a hospital, because of visitation restrictions. So I think you're going to see a lot of just the lack of closure, because they're not able to say goodbye. So I think, someone in your role would really be able to help, them talk it through. So, thank you for everything you're doing, but I think you're going to be busy.
Yeah, very busy.
But thank you again. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for sharing your experience. I really appreciate it. And it's nice to hear an outside perspective, from pretty far away. So thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.